Association. So we welcome you all to this annual event of Alumni Cell, the Alumni Nexus. Before we begin, let me tell you a bit about the Alumni Cell. Our mission is to foster a lifelong connection between the students and the alumni. We bridge the gap between the students and the alumni to create a strong and supportive community that contributes to the overall growth and development of students. Today, we are here to kick off our Alumni Cell's first ever annual event, Alumni Nexus, with the theme Apurva, which means unprecedented. With Alumni Nexus, we are beginning with a unique event that aims to bring together alumni with diverse backgrounds and industries to foster collaboration, innovation and growth. It's a platform for students to learn from their achievements, to network and to explore new opportunities.
Thank you. In the interest of time, I'm going to keep it slow. I'm going to keep it fast. It's really a pleasure and nostalgic to be back in Sydenham, and even a delight to welcome my friend and fellow alum, Vikas Choudhury. He was in Sydenham, graduated in '96. He was the chairman of the Sydenham Photographic Society. Do you yet have that now anymore? Sydenham Photographic Society, do you have airspace? Okay, so that's not good. You didn't think of longevity and sustainability, because he has, after graduating from Sydenham, he went to NM, he went to University of Pittsburgh, and then also did an executive course at Harvard. And so, it's a very illustrious educational career, which shows the importance of education, importance of being focused, and importance of doing things and making it work. After that, he joined EMEA, which is one of the world's largest data-driven marketing companies. He has joined Reliance, where he was a part of Jio, and that's why he is extremely upset that you don't have Wi-Fi here, because he was instrumental in wiring up almost 50,000 colleges free across India. As part of his tenure, he's worked directly with Mukesh Ambani and learned a lot. So it'll be very interesting learning from him on project execution, on rolling out things and thinking big. He is also running his own family office, which does investments. He has invested in companies, out of which 10 of them are unicorns. So you obviously know that you're dealing with a really smart, intelligent guy here, and has always been since Sydenham days. But you didn't score very well, right, in your TY, did you? Okay, so anyway, we have loads to learn from him, and the loads to learn about his vision for the future of the country. And he is right now, they're extremely grateful, Vikas, that you're here, because I know that you're in the midst of a big fundraise. He is setting up a fund to invest in more startups, and so you'll also have a session later on where you'll be speaking about startups. So he is the man to reach if you have a good idea. So welcome, Vikas, and thank you.
I don't think I've come back since we graduated. Thanks, Adil, for inviting me, and and the rest of our fellow alumnus for putting this Alumni Association together. Look forward to engaging more. So, what I'm going to do today is just share a little bit of how I look at the future. I think some of us have been privileged to be in an industry, having started work in the technology domain over 25 years ago, when it was still a niche industry, if you will. I've had again the honor of being a tech CEO for my entire career, and most recently, of course, in the last 5 years, I got to build Reliance Jio out. As you know, it's a very proud moment for all of us as Indians. It's now become the most valuable company in India from a market cap perspective. But what that's given us, more importantly, I think, is two learnings. One is, where is the world going? And clearly, I'm a huge believer in digital disruption. I actually believe that, the next 10 years is going to be far more developmental and disruptive, for humans in their lives, businesses, in a positive way, driven by technology. And what can we learn from some of the things that are happening, which are very early on? So I'm going to share some of that with you, which is more global in nature. And then talk to you a little bit about why I think India is poised to be the next superpower, if you will. And I call it India's decade, and it's not just me, but you have everybody from around the world that's calling it India's decade. And I'll give you a little bit of stats as to why we think we're at the juncture of an inflection point to create the maximum value in the world. So let me begin without much ado. How do we move the slides? Alright. So let me start with, the future is digital. More importantly than that, I think the future is different. What got us here is not going to get us there going forward. What's really important to understand is that the top 10 companies in the world change every 10 years. So this is something that isn't really obvious, but if you look at the top 10 companies in the year 2000 and you move on to 2010, 2020, if you see, there are very few companies on the top which I put in color are the ones that remain as consistently. Microsoft is actually the only company in the world that's been able to occupy that position for about 30 years. But the rest of the companies actually fall off, and therefore you need to look at what's going on. Can you hear me okay? Yeah? So if you look at, in fact, if you look at 2020, very importantly, 6 out of these top 10 companies have already fallen off the top 10 list. So just because you get to become the largest companies in the world does not actually mean that you will stay out there. Right? The second piece that you need to understand is that all the equity value creation in technology companies actually happens in private markets, not in public markets. Because by the time a company goes public, it actually already has captured maximum value in terms of what it's done. So if you look at it from the year 2000 till now, for the last 20-22 years, essentially public markets globally have delivered 2.8x returns versus private equity has delivered 8x returns. So that is really where the massive opportunity is. So the world is actually moving away from banking and public equities, and debt into more and more technology-led private investors. So I'm going to start with a few thoughts to leave behind with you. What's happening globally, right, in terms of essentially ecosystem movements. If you look at this chart here, the top 5 companies in the world, right, just a combination of Apple, Amazon, Google, Microsoft, and Facebook, are cumulatively worth more than the next 282 companies in the world put together, right? And that is what is happening. This is basically called a platform approach. So companies are now becoming platforms, which means they go out and own an entire domain and a stack, and then create disproportionate value. It's also called the network effect in the technology and where we are. So what you need to understand is, how do you bet on those companies that are able to create those two-sided marketplaces and become dominant in their ecosystems. The second is that, we are in this era of virtual globalization, right? So whether there is COVID or not, whether you can travel or not, essentially everything is becoming completely asset-light, completely virtual, right? So all businesses, as you know, some of the ones that you can see on the left, because of Instagram, you can see, what anybody is doing today in New York or LA or Singapore or China. If you look at, there's no physical infrastructure. Instagram has no business other than a website, right, or an app. If you look at Uber, of course, nobody owns the cars. You can become an Uber driver, you can become an Uber rider. If you look at Airbnb again, the company doesn't actually own any homes, but it is actually the largest inventory of homes and rental properties in the world. And if you look at banking, which is sort of the holy grail, of money movement and financial systems, across the world today, all banks in the future will be obsolete. Right? There will be no physical banks that exist going further. If you look at some of the largest neo banks, as they're called in the world today, N26 is one such European bank that essentially does not have any branches. So 100% of a bank is simply an app on your mobile phone. And if you see it closer to home back here in India as well, in a country of 1 billion people, less than 25-30 million people have credit cards, but now 250 million people actually transact on UPI, which is simply using your 4-digit code or a UPI code on your mobile phone.
So the third paradigm shift that we're looking at is opportunity has now become democratized in the world, right? So if you're looking at any business globally, what you see is because of platforms like a Netflix or a TikTok, right? In fact, if you look at, some of you guys will recognize this, it's the most famous Korean drama series, reality series that was ever created on Netflix. And it became the most watched series in the world. And it's not even in English, right? Whoever thought that a Korean is really going to be a content creator that's going to become the most famous genre in the world. And that really gives you an idea as to how democratized opportunity is today. If you have talent, you can be in any part of the world in any language, and you'll be able to create something that the world can see. And of course, TikTok, which is now banned in India, but has now become obviously the largest value creator in the world with respect to media and reality stars. Right? TikTok, some of these dancers and showcases on TikTok today earn more money than Hollywood and Bollywood stars individually, and that's how famous they've gone out and become. The fourth paradigm that I want to talk about is that the world is moving at an extremely rapid pace, right? And which we call scale at the speed of thought. So if some of you guys, I don't know if you recognize this, was the world's largest AR gaming company ever, right? Called Pokemon Go. It was a game that was huge about 10 years ago. What's really interesting here is that when this game launched, within the first 90 days, the game got downloaded by 500 million people, 500 million plus people, and created $500 million of revenue in 90 days. And that's it. At the end of that, the game lasted for the next couple of years, but all the value creation, like $500 million, was created in 90 days. So the speed at which businesses today get built and get delivered is absolutely incredible. And I can keep talking to you about more and more of this. And we onboarded more than 100 million people at Jio within the first 90 days of the launch of our business. If you're looking at ChatGPT now in AI, right, you've got more than 1 million people that signed on to ChatGPT within 7 days of a launch of a product. So essentially what you need to move and think about is every single day, every single hour is extremely precious in terms of speed of execution of business. The next paradigm is all products and services are becoming frictionless. So the less and less you need to do, the less and less you need to interact, the less buttons you need to press, the less forms you need to fill, the less people you need to talk to, is determinant of how successful your business is going to be. So if you look at this particular business, it's a company in the US called the Dollar Shave Club. They came up with a very, very simple idea, right? They said, what does a man, which is half the population of the world, do every single morning, right? A man shaves. And I see a lot of you guys in the new millennial generation don't shave, but this was a massive problem that the world had, and there was one company, that was Gillette, that dominated this entire business. And guess what? The Gillette model, as you all know, is you buy a razor for 99 rupees, but then every time you buy a cartridge, each cartridge is another 99 rupees, which lasts you less than a month, right? Obviously, this was a whole big marketing distribution, margin play. So these guys came up with this simple idea of saying, why should I need to go buy a razor, go buy a cartridge every month? They created a simple subscription plan. You sign up to this subscription every month. You sign up once, and every month they will send you 4 cartridges home. As simple as that. Because they took out the friction of needing to go and buy, needing to advertise, needing to go out and keep engaging with any sort of retail distribution network. They actually dropped the price of cartridges by half, by 50%. Imagine the cost saving here for a normal person. This company, within 5 years of establishing this company, got sold for $1 billion to Unilever, right? Because they got into this business to compete with Gillette. So that's how very really simple ideas they take out friction from a business to you. The only reason why Jio became the most successful telco in the country, in addition to, of course, the network and the pricing over that, was because pre-Jio, you needed to fill in 10 forms, you need to walk into a store, you need to buy a SIM card, you needed to put your Aadhaar, KYC, all of that. You used to go home and you used to take 24 or 48 hours for a SIM to get activated. It was an entire process, as if you're buying gold. When we started Jio, you could walk into a Jio store, put in a thumbprint, no signature, no form, nothing, and within 7 minutes of walking out the store, your SIM card would be live. So we started onboarding 1 million SIMs a day, and that's what frictionless experience brings to you. Then the next piece of how businesses are going, right? We talked a little bit about AI has become the largest flavor of the day after ChatGPT has come up again. But essentially AI has been around now for the last 10 years and is taking massive leaps in terms of advancement of technology. Of course, what you see here is the Tesla self-driving car, right? And if you guys have had the luxury to see some of the friends that we have in the US that have these cars, they do genuinely drive themselves, right? You do not need a driver in today's day and age to drive a car. Imagine the amount of AI that goes into that, right? They have 8 cameras, 12 sensors, LiDAR. They are able to see 250 meters, 360 degrees around you as a car. And guess what? Actually that car is more intelligent than a human being, because what's happening is that all cars on Tesla are talking to each other continuously. They're continuously monitoring the roads, the traffic conditions, the human behavior, how humans interact, and they're actually 3.6 times less likely to cause a crash than an actual human driver. So it's actually safer to be in a driverless car than to be in a driver-driven car. And the last piece I want to talk to you about, and these are very large, and I'm going really quickly, but these are really the economies of the future, right? These are the principles, the 7 principles on which businesses are now being built globally, and you have to look at these principles and make sure that you adapt to them. Otherwise, your business will not really last if you're trying to build large businesses today. And the last point here in that is what I call economics of outcomes, right? So if you can, again, if you look at what this image talks to you about, it really talks to you about the largest age-old business in the world today, which is large-scale manufacturing. Rolls-Royce, the car company, actually is started off as an airline engine company, and even today the biggest business in the world is building these airline engines. Guess what? All these airline engines cost tens of millions of dollars, right? And you would have read recently, it was a very proud moment for India, where India placed the world's largest order of almost 500 planes, between Boeing and Airbus. And what happens behind that is obviously Rolls-Royce gets billions of dollars of orders for making those engines. Guess what's happening? There's a massive paradigm shift happening in business models. Nobody wants to buy tens of millions of dollars of equipment anymore, right? So what Rolls-Royce now does is it's created something called engine as a service. They're actually giving these engines away to airlines. These engines are now connected to every other engine in every other flight in the world. Every single day, 70 trillion data points of every second of flying around the world is being collected real time by engines around the world, and that helps them prevent crashes, that helps them understand how pilots are behaving, how climate is behaving, and how do you take real time decisions in an automated way to maintain those engines, right? And now they're only charging you by the hour. For every hour that you fly, they will charge you a few $100,000, right? That's the paradigm shift. Now 50% of Rolls-Royce's revenues in engines is not selling engines, it's actually renting engines in the world. So it's saying, if my engine doesn't work, don't pay me. Right? So it's an economics of outcomes. You have to transfer from selling to actually saying that if I deliver value for you, you pay me. So that, moving on, I think those were my 7 key takeaways for you in terms of principles of building global businesses. I will then move on to now how we can, how we as India can adapt some of this. Where are we with respect to our macroeconomic environment, our demographics, what is happening in India, why I think this is the place to be, right? Traditionally, all of us that were privileged and that could go abroad, did go abroad after our graduation. But I believe now more and more people are coming back, more and more people ought to stay here. The businesses and careers that you can now build in India, especially over the next 10 years, are going to be larger than the businesses and opportunities that you can get outside of India. So what's happening? The first piece is India has now crossed the UK just about 3 months ago to become the world's largest, the third largest economy by purchasing power parity, right? So we're a $3.5 trillion economy. More importantly than that, more than 50% of our economy, more than $1 trillion, is domestic consumption. Why is that really important, right? It is because when 2022 started the biggest recession in the world in the last 10 years, right? It was driven by the Russian war and the energy crisis. It was driven by, therefore, oil prices. It was driven by interest hikes by the Federal Bank, by the Federal Reserve in the US that led to the largest inflation in the world. None of those, and of course it finally was driven by the supply chain breakdown of China completely closing down and COVID. None of that affected India, because India essentially eats what it kills, right, in that sense. Of course, if you look at digital India today, we have more than 1 billion phones. I can obviously, needless to say, each one of us in this room has at least one phone, if not more than one phone at this point in time. What's really amazing is, thanks to Jio, and I don't say that only because I was there, but because pre-Jio, India had 5 million 4G users. In 5 years, we've gone from 5 million 4G users to 500 million 4G users, which means today our country has gone from being the data dark country in the world, as we were known, to being the data richest country in the world. When you say a proper 500 million people outside of China, we have more data on human beings in India than we have in any other country. It's more than the population of any other country in the world. That makes you a massive difference in the flywheel of all of this coming together. So the ecosystem again needs to come together. When all of this comes together, that is when the country gets ready to essentially take off. And well, Jeff Bezos says that I predict this is the 21st century is going to be the Indian century. Goldman Sachs says it's going to be India's decade. McKinsey says this is going to be, again, India's century. So these are the biggest, largest corporations, the smartest people in the world that are saying that India is really going to be where the future is and all these corporations, all these individuals, it is not a coincidence that the topmost tech companies in the world are now run by Indians, whether it is Microsoft and Satya Nadella, whether it is Google and Sundar Pichai, IBM, Adobe, you can keep going on and on. All of these companies now are run by Indians, because for all these companies, the largest growth market in the world today is India. So if you look at these graphs, we are today at about a $3 trillion economy and a $2,000 per capita income. And this is exactly where China was in 2007. China doubled that in 4 years. In 2011, China went to a $7 trillion economy and a $5,000 per capita. The minute you cross that magic 5 number, which is going to happen in India, India can't do it in 4 years because we are more democratic as a nation, but it will happen in the next 10 years. The minute you cross that number, India will explode, because suddenly you will have 500 million more people who can afford more than their basic daily wages. Right? This is the biggest massive shift that is coming to India, right? It is the most aspirational country, the most optimistic country in the world, because it's going from not having as a nation to having as a nation. Right? 10 years, India will add more than 20% of the world's population will be driven by India and by Indians. Right? We will add more than 100 million more youth to the working population in the world. The only other continent put together that will equal India is Africa. Every other country in the world is actually degrowing. So we will continue to have the youngest population in the world, and therefore we will continue to be the largest growing nation in the world. Everybody from Japan to America, to Europe is actually degrowing as a population. So they have a huge aging problem, and we have the reverse. And very importantly, so just go back. There was if you just look at the consumption outside of India, outside the US, India is actually the largest consumer now in the world as well, right? So although Indians might spend much lesser money, we're very frugal because of our per capita, we're actually the largest spenders today in the world. And that is really, really important for a country, because you're fueled by your own consumption and you're not dependent only on imports or exports. Right? Out of the $3 trillion economy, our imports and exports are only $300 billion. So 90% of our economy is actually self-sustaining, which is why the world today looks up to India. Right? India this year is now the head of the G20 as well, and that only happens when you become really powerful as a nation in the world. And actually this is something that is not obvious to a lot of people outside of India. It might be obvious to a lot of us sitting here, but digital India is already larger than every single country in the world. We have more YouTube viewers than the entire population of United States that started the YouTube. Right? We have more gamers than the entire population of Brazil. We have more music listeners than the population of Russia, and we have more shoppers than the entire population of Japan. And the party has just begun, right? As we say, the party to abhi shuru hui hai. This 100 million people are going to go to 1 billion people. And can you imagine what that is going to do for us as a country? And single-handedly, Facebook, Amazon, Google, for content, commerce, payments, everybody has said that India is the world's largest growth market for us, and that is seen in our unicorns, right? India in the last 5 years has produced over 100 unicorns in India, and therefore there is massive opportunity for startups in our country as well. So I'll skip some of these charts, are too technical, but essentially all I wanted to say was India used to get about $10 billion of venture capital every year from global FDI. It's now gone up to between 26 to 38 billion dollars. So India has now become the most invested market in the world outside of China. If you go to the next slide, what happens is when you get that kind of capital in the country, we have now become the third largest startup ecosystem in the world, and I think we will actually eclipse China in the next 10 years. So we now have China, US has about 500 unicorns, China is 170, India has already reached 108, and therefore you're going to see massive opportunity as you think about your careers and you think about where you're going to go. It's not just the Reliances and the Tatas and the Googles of the world. There's going to be massive opportunity creation at the bottom of the pyramid with startups. And the three largest industries where most of this money is going today in India, e-commerce, we have 6 lakh villages, 19,000 pin codes in our country. We do not have enough roads and airports to get there. So e-commerce is going to be the way that most of our country is going to buy our goods going forward. The future of finance is fintech, as we talked about it, completely digital banking and software as a service. India is moving from a service economy to a products economy. Right? For the first time in the world, India is now able to create products, software products, and offer them on the cloud as a service. So these are the 3 biggest industries that account for 75% of all venture capital coming into the country, and this is going to be the largest growth engines for our country going forward. And most importantly, I think for some of us who work in the investments space, I advise the Indian government on how do we bring in more capital into the country. As Jio, we had the world's largest private equity raise. As you guys would have known, we raised $27 billion single-handedly in India, which is equal to more than money that India had ever raised in the last 5 years in the world. We actually returned significant capital as well. In 2021, India had, for the first time in the history of the world, returned more money in venture capital than China. So there was over $10 billion, it was close to now almost 1 lakh crores that was returned back to investors in that single year through acquisitions, through IPOs, through secondaries, and all of that. What I'm also very proud to say is that some of us saw this coming. So we were an investor in Myntra, which was sold to Flipkart. We wrote the Tata strategy, on which Tata knew the whole digital strategy is built today. We were investors in Policybazaar that went IPO. We were investors in Nazara. So some things that we thought were happening for the last 10 years actually came to fruition in 2021. So just the last couple of slides, why I'm really passionate about this is, what we call our unique blend is entrepreneur capital. I've been an entrepreneur my life. I've built businesses sort of from scratch. If you just go to the next few ones, I'm going to skip this, going to be very quick. I had the fortune of building Jio from scratch with Mr. Ambani. We went from zero to $11 billion in revenue profitably with 45% EBITDA, and which is something that most technology companies and startups don't do. Some of the others I've already spoken to you, some of the other numbers I've already spoken to you about. Move on to the next one. And if you look at, we also had the privilege of betting on Tech India. So all that I'm telling you, I've been actually saying for 10 years. Luckily in 2021, all this came together. I've made about 100 investments in startups in India. 10 of them have become unicorns or IPOs or exits. So God has been kind in that sense, but there's just massive value creation that's happening in our country. Again, I won't bore you through some of this, but I invested the first ever company that we angel invested in India was a company called Inmobi. It became India's first ever unicorn. We invested in it at $1 million valuation in 2007. It is today at a $10 billion valuation. We are still investors and shareholders in that company, right? And the story after that, Myntra, which we sold to, which became Flipkart, Fractal, India's first AI unicorn. Zipdial was the first acquisition of Twitter in India, so on and so forth. I won't bore you with all of this, but so my summary and takeaway for you, I call it the 7 deadly truths instead of the 7 deadly sins. From global, just recounting from ecosystem domination and virtual globalization, all the way to economics of outcomes. That's what you need to think about when you think about big picture, how do you build businesses, and your local to take away for you from India, from being the 3rd largest economy in the world already today, to this being not India's decade, but India's century. So that's it, I think. Thank you.
We for sure learned a lot, and you brought up a positive perspective on the digital disruption topic, so thank you for that. Now I would like to call upon our very own Vibhuti Kanwar for an interview session with you, sir. Thank you.
Good morning, Vikas Choudhury sir. This was a really insightful session for all of the aspiring entrepreneurs, I would say. So we can start off with the interview with a kind of fun session where you can reconnect to your college days, I would say.
Sounds good.
Okay, so my first question is, what was your most memorable experience at college and why?
I think something that I got to do in Sydenham, which was very dear to my heart, which I brought it today. So when we graduated, we were in and around the 75 years of Sydenham. At that point in time, Sydenham was known as the foremost college in India and almost in Asia at that point in time, as the top commerce and economics college of the country. Because we were commemorating 75 years of Sydenham at that point, we had this, our principal was Dr. Belsaray, and he was actually also the head of our photographic society. So he and I shared a very common passion in photography. So we actually produced a book commemorating 75 years of Sydenham. It was a photo journal. So we went and shot, at Sydenham at that time used to be really pretty in terms of just the infrastructure. The old colleges that had this great campus. So we shot different parts of the college. We got editorials, all produced by students to put that book together. We got it sponsored by some of the Tatas and Birlas and all that, who are all ex-Sydenhamites, and therefore proud to do that. And that book actually was then distributed, of course, to all the students and alumni at that time. And we actually went on to win a national award for photography for that book. So that was our proudest moment
We would really love to see the book if ever possible.
Yeah, I will. I'm sorry I should have brought it today. I completely skipped my mind. I'll get you time. Basically sitting in that room, and there were 30-40 of us in the society. So we had like the 5 best years of our life ever.
So there would be times that you got caught, or I would say something funny incident you could share about them.
No, there were lots and lots of things that we did, which are some of it are not even mentionable at this point in time. Luckily, there was no internet, so we grew up before the internet, so nobody could tweet about it, nobody could Instagram about it, and so on and so forth. But I don't know what would you say. I think we used to spend half our time in the canteen. We used to spend half our time in the dark room, as it was called, because it was a photographic society. I think I can't specifically remember funny instances now at this point. We used to have lots and lots of guest speakers like you guys are doing now, who used to come into our, our auditorium was the most active, I think, auditorium in the city. Every week we used to have some celebrity, some actor, some this, some that come in. But I can't remember anything specific. But it was a lot of fun, I can tell you that.
That it could be. This is an interesting question. If you could have dinner with any historical figure, who would it be and why?
I'm going to deliberately say something very controversial. I would actually have dinner with Hitler and try and understand what motivated him to go down the path that he did go.
Okay. That was a good answer. Lastly, I would like you to share some insights for our students, our college students.
Insights for college students?
Like, for example, your guidance, your advice for us, for our future, and anything in general you would like to share.
So I think I'm obviously a bit biased, as you saw from what I put out there, but I truly believe that the largest opportunity that belongs to us as Indians and in India here today is the fact that we are young, that we are aspirational, that we are hardworking, and we have a lot of stuff going for us. English being a very important language of business in the world, because of which India stands tall, if you will. So leverage all of these skills. Run faster than you could ever do. Something that I learned from Mukesh bhai, if I can sort of use some of those principles, is he used to say something very interesting for us when we used to sit in the boardroom building Jio, right? And we used to have meetings we used to start meetings at midnight. रात को 12 बजे we were sitting in office and we were thinking about the big picture strategy of the country and of the company and कि क्या करना चाहिए. And his famous line used to be, I am 60, you guys are 40, where's the junoon? So थोड़ा पागलपन होना चाहिए. You should be sort of eccentric in terms of how you think, in terms of how you work, in terms of how you behave. There is just absolutely massive opportunity that's sitting out there, but there is absolutely no substitute to hard work. So read a lot, meet a lot of people. I think just meeting people, getting to know people is really, really critical. Social skills, communication skills, soft skills are actually more important than any hard skills that you will ever be taught in your life. So I think that's something that I would say is not ever taught in our education system, or colleges. So pay a lot of attention to that. And travel the world. The world is extremely global. So any chance that you ever get, go out and meet new people, go to different countries, learn about different cultures, learn about different businesses. Don't get stuck in your, in a single area that is of interest or domain to you. And I can assure you, if you have a positive outlook, you can perform 10x of what you ever, like I never dreamt I will get to run a company as large in the world's largest company like Jio at one point in time, right? When I got out of Sydenham. But that's what the world gives you as an opportunity. So have that optimism and go for it.
Thank you so much, sir, for your time. This was all for today.
And thank you for taking your time out for this event. Also, we would actually like to felicitate you. I request Dr. Singhal sir to kindly felicitate Vikas Choudhury sir.